the hut and welcome to our first proper episode. And I am here at East Beach Studios with the fabulous Maura Walsh. So Maura was an accidental landlord who now has a portfolio, don't mind me saying, it's about 5 million now.
That's it.
And counting. Maura has got so many skills. So problem properties, probably problem landlords and tenants as well, short leases, HMOs and loads of other stuff in between. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You're all right.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. We're delighted to have you here. Can I ask, first of all, what would your typical day be if you weren't here with us today as a property investor?
That's the beauty of being a property investor. Every day is different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be I'm on the phone to solicitors, brokers, builders, trades, suppliers, or I'm reading through leases, unpicking service charges, that kind of thing. But each day's your own. So if I decide today I'm going to do loads of work, I do. And if I decide I'm doing not very much, that's what I do. So it's very nice that I can pick and mix my days.
Lovely. Have you been in property a long time?
I became a landlord in 2008. So shall I just tell you my little story?
Come on, tell me. We want it all.
Okay. So I became a landlord in 2008 when I moved to another property with my mum. We bought a house that we converted that she had her own little annex and such like in it. And then I had the house. So I became a landlord at that point. That was in 2008. I did absolutely nothing till 2018. So I kept going. I think I've said this before. This is crap. I'm only earning 50 quid a month out of this. Well, that's my pension anyway. Yeah. And I kind of did nothing. I was on a date. And on the third date, I said, I fancy doing property investing. Yeah. And the conversation I had with Dave was, well, what's stopping you? And it was a light bulb moment because I kind of went, you're right, what is stopping me? So I then had a look at the property. By this time, it had gone up in value to double what I purchased it for. So I bought it originally for 145.
In 2008?
In 2006.
2006?
In 2008, I turned it into a consent to let and did nothing, as I say, for years. And then in 2018, I went back and had a look at it, and all of a sudden the property was now worth 285,000. So that was the start of PM renovations. So I was able to refinance. Took a remortgage, put that then, instead of the consent to let, put it onto a buy to let mortgage, and then I was able to pull out about 140 grand.
And what did you do with that?
So that's when PM renovation started.
Brilliant.
I went to look at a flat that I'd looked at in Croydon. Well, first of all, I started to look at Doncaster, up north. Kent, driving around the world looking at different things, and then a property came up that I'd looked at in Croydon. It was a 1-bedroom flat, and it went to auction, didn't sell, and I didn't go and look at it, to be honest, because I was thinking, well, I can't do local because I can't afford it. Yeah. It came back up because it hadn't sold, and I thought, you know what, let me go and have a look. And I remember Dave came with me at the time, and I was touching the walls going, this wall's moving, we can't buy this. But I bit the bullet. I did a sort of bridge and purchase. I knew it had a short lease. And I bought the property for, I think it was 140,000 at the time. We spent about 12 grand doing it up. When I bought it, it was a short lease.
Now, I remember sitting in a car with you and travelling from Peterborough to Gatwick Airport. I don't know what happened after I dropped you off or where you went, but I remember we were having the conversation in the car about short leases.
Yes.
Now, would you mind, for anybody listening who's not au fait with short leases, Could you give us a little educational piece about short leases and how they work and what you do?
Okay, so with property, with flats, you'll have a leaseholder and you have a freeholder. The freeholder owns the land and the outside of the building that the property stands on. The leaseholder owns the inside and the contents. So what happens over the time, the lease drops down, so it becomes short. Once it gets below 80 years, it gets harder to sell and it gets harder to remortgage because of the lease.
So 80 years?
So anything below 80 years becomes harder to lease unless you know specialist lenders, etc.
Okay.
But for the open market, it becomes unmortgageable.
Okay.
So once it goes down in years.
So when you see those adverts like on Rightmove and there's this lovely little flat and it will often say short lease, cash buyers only.
Yes.
Is that right? Is it so you can only buy it with cash?
No.
Okay. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So when it says cash only, you can go and buy with a bridge. You can buy on specialist mortgages. There's certain mortgages. I know Barclays do to 30 years on lease.
Okay.
There's some others that will do lower leases and they look at the term. So there's a couple of other lenders that will lend on lower leases. What I usually do, and what I did with the flat that I mentioned a minute ago, was I bought it for 140. In the paperwork and the legal pack, it said there was a section 42 that had been signed over to the. It would be signed over to the buyer.
What is a section 42? Is it a band?
No, that's level 42. Section 42 is for a lease extension. So when you have a short lease, the leaseholder will write via solicitors to the freeholder saying, I would like to extend my lease and add so many years. It used to be 90 years. Now people are doing, you can do 999 years. So you can extend your lease. There is a process that you need to follow. So you put in your request.
Who do you put that request into? Your solicitor to go to the vendor?
So you know, what you would do is via your solicitor, it would go to the freeholder or the freeholder's solicitor. Find out who it is. And you will put your request in to extend the lease. They usually come back. So then it goes into a formal process, which has timescales and whatever have you along the way. So then the freeholder would write back with their offer, which is known as a Section 45. They would give their offer, and then you negotiate between the two. If you can't negotiate, it might have to go to court or tribunal. And the whole process can take between 6 months and 12 months for the process. With the flat I bought, it had the Section 42 in place, but that was to the seller who was selling it on. There was actually a middle person in the middle mix of all of this that was a we buy any house kind of person, and they had thrown it into the auction. So they were the third party, and any uplift that I would pay compared to what they would pay, the person in the middle was creaming off the top. So by the time it came to me for the Section 42, it wasn't actually valid. So I didn't know that at the time, and thank God the freeholder didn't know that at the time, because I could have kind of a little bit unstuck then. What happened then was I wrote to the freeholder saying, hi, I'm Maura, I'm the new owner of this, you know, the one-bedroom flat. I want to make some changes. Can you come and have a look? And I'd like to extend my lease. And thank God he said yes. So he came round, had a look. We told him what we wanted to do, etc. So then what I did was I took down a wall, made the kitchen into the sitting room because there wasn't enough room for a washing machine in the kitchen. We refurbed the flat, put new electrics in, etc. And within about 6 to 8 weeks, agreed the lease extension with the freeholder, and within about 6 to 8 weeks, it was revalued at 235, which then allowed me to pull all my money out and go again.
Fantastic. And can I ask, I keep hearing the marriage value?
Yes.
could you explain to anyone who doesn't know about marriage value?
Okay.
Because you're good at this.
So what happens when a property goes lower than 8 years, 80 years should I say, marriage value kicks in. So with the marriage value, what that means is if the property is worth, for argument's sake, 200,000 with its current lease, with an extended lease, it could be worth 300,000. Now, when marriage value kicks in, what happens is you put in your section 42, your request, but once it's under 80 years, to extend the lease, they will look at the ground rent.
Yeah.
And now when you do a lease extension, the ground rent has to go to zero. So the first part of the lease extension would be how many years are left on the lease, and say it's £10, I don't know, a year for the ground rent. They would add that up with the number of years, so that's part of your lease, and the other part of it is the marriage value. So there's a calculation, but roughly what would happen is if the property is worth 200 on a short lease but 300 on a full lease, the freeholder will be looking at acquiring about 50%. So he would be looking at about £50,000 for you to extend the lease, so that you then get that extra added value there.
Right.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I hear you love HMOs as well.
So after I did the first property,
Yeah.
I then said, well, hang on a minute. If I'm going to be doing a bridging, at this point I owned my house outright with my mum, and I said, well, I could actually use my house to leverage, so no money down, use my house to leverage, and instead of using my house to leverage for the sake of 50,000, why don't I do two? So at that point, I went, and I didn't even want to do HMOs because I was like, no, they sound too risky. But anyway, went with Dave, sort of said, do the HMOs, they're worth it. I know other people have done them, blah, blah, blah. So went in, I found a derelict property, and I found a probate flat, and I used my house to leverage against both of them and did like a three-way deal where I used my house as leverage on the two properties that I was buying. That was my first HMO, which I bought for 290, and I spent about 120,000 maybe converting it into a 4-bedroom HMO, and then that got revalued at 540 when we'd finished. And then I did the same with the flat. Instead of making it a 1-bedroom flat, what I did was it had a nice sized kitchen that I could put a breakfast bar in. I made it into a mini-mo, is what I
love a mini-mo. They're dreamy.
So what we did there was the sitting room and the bedrooms were like nice sizes. So we put the combination locks. You didn't have to go through the same regulations as you do a normal HMO. So we had the fixed fire alarms, fire doors, whatever have you. And then what I did was I ended up with 2 people in a 1-bedroom flat. Now, at the time, the rent for a 1-bedroom flat was £900, something like that. Yeah. But because I made it into a mini-mo, I was then earning £1,300 a month, so it was an extra £400. But what I also did was I found a provider, a social housing provider, and he took the HMO from me because it was in Croydon. There was no Article 4 at that time, so he took that one. He also took the mini-mo, and then when I bought my next HMO, he also bought that. So we started to cookie cut, but then what happened? Article 4 came in, and it kind of went, we might need to do other bits and pieces. So that's kind of, and then again, that was bought for like 158. We didn't have to extend the lease or anything on that one, but then that was valued at 235 as well. So we got all the money out, and then I went on to do the 4th property, which was the HMO. In the meantime, I also looked at doing a business acquisition. Wow. So I found a retiring landlord the lady was selling it. It was her husband's portfolio, but he passed away, and there was other issues. Another family member had passed away that was going to be taking it on, so she just wanted to get short of it.
Yeah.
And that was 2 flats and a house in Wallington. It was valued at the time at 900,000. I managed to secure it for 528,000.
How did you do it?
Well, got talking to the lady. She
Yeah.
said she'd had other offers, but there were some things that she was telling me that weren't ringing true. And I said, whether I do this deal with you or not, and I kind of built up the rapport.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you have a solicitor that understands businesses, because if you are selling, yes, you're selling the property, but you're also selling the business. Now, for me, the stamp duty was at 0.5%, you know, because it was buying a business. I'm buying the shares in the business, which so happens to have 3 properties in. What I also did was I had a investor who lent me the 100,000 to do what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Then once we took over it, because we had to put it into a separate SPV, which is a special purchase vehicle. I knew you were going to ask me. So we bought it. So the property, the portfolio was called Heathcote. I then put it into another company called PM Renovations 2.
Hey.
It went into, so it went from bridging, from PM2. I then refinanced back into Heathcote, and that was like the special purchase vehicle to be able to do the deal. I refinanced it back, and then it became Heathcote, because obviously when you're buying from someone else, you can't lend, they can't lend on the property, on the business that's already owned. You have to have another vehicle to do it in.
Which is the SPV.
Yeah.
Nice.
So then what we did was refinanced each of the flats separately, and then I was able, well, the market kind of turned, Liz Truss came in, stress tested everything, and we ended up with about 50,000 back out, which then goes into other stories of what else we did to use it to be able to pay back the investor, but we paid back the investor. While that was going on, because that took about 1.5 years to buy the business, I also, the first freeholder that I mentioned, I began doing property management for him because he has a portfolio of flats in and around Croydon. And so I started to do some of his property management and work. All the time I was still working.
Oh my gosh! So you were still working, and you had a quite a pressurised job, didn't you?
I used to work, in social care. Originally, I was I worked my way up. Was a head of service in social care, like an admin manager. I then went over and became a consultant and looking at performance in social care. In 2000, when was COVID? 2020?
Around there, isn't it? Yeah.
So there was an opportunity to take voluntary redundancy. My mum at the time had dementia, so I wanted to be at home a bit more. So I thought, well, this is my perfect opportunity. Go for it. And the day that I completed on the second flat that I just mentioned, I made into the mini-mo. I was in the process. We've done the other flat, so we've done the flat and done the other HMO. And on the day I got the valuation was the day that the world stopped because of COVID, and my voluntary redundancy came through, and I thought, shit, what have I done?
Yeah.
So we had already started a project, another HMO, and obviously you couldn't have anybody, trades or anyone in, so I learned how to do roofing.
Of course you did.
Plasterboarding, insulating.
Amazing.
Well, there was no one else that could do it, so obviously you can only go with your household. So at the time I was with Dave, and that's what we did. And just had to get on with it during COVID. So when I realised I wasn't going to die, because I kept watching the news and everyone said, don't watch the news. So just got on with it. And we managed to get that off a bridge then as well. So we'd done the business acquisition. We were doing, that was now our second real HMO, the other one's a mini-mo. And then what happened was I had in the process as well a flat that I was buying that was a short lease in Bromley, which became a little bit of an issue, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
But that was a short leased property as well. And obviously my mum, in the mix of all of this, had passed away. My daughter had bought her own property, which I'm kind of proud of her, but I did kind of help her because it was an auction property and I showed her how to do it and helped her along the way. But you know, she saved, she saved up and she did what she needed to do, and she, you know, she got on the housing ladder as well. And as I say, so because Mum had the dementia, it was nice to be around. Voluntary redundancy, in and around, like being there if I needed to be. And once Mum passed away, I had the house. Because of things that had gone wrong with other properties, or the Bromley property, I say, I was on a bridge. So what I then said was, right, how do I get out of this bridge? Yeah. So I turned my own home into a 5-bedroom HMO.
Legend.
So that I could then, pay off the bridge, pay off my investors, and had about 130 grand left over. That I said, right, what do I do with this? So then I decided to go on, and I've done another 2 properties in Kent because I had a little holiday chalet home. That again we bought quite cheap because it needed everything doing to it and whatever have you. So I was staying there. I found another property that was meant to be, it was a 2-bedroom flat, absent landlord, short lease. I managed to track down the absent freeholder. Buying the property, I'd be a joint freeholder with them. So I bought the property, extended my lease and his, because it's just a paper exercise, because I'm now the joint freeholder. I needed him to sign the joint freeholder documents as well. Did the works on it, and that particular flat I was actually selling. It went 6-7 months and we weren't getting anywhere with the buyer. Then the buyer decided to pull out. So then what I did was I just put it on to remortgaged it and rented it out. So that's rented out. It was on a bridge partly, but that was paid off. So what I've actually done all along the way is leverage whatever I have, whether it's been using my own home, investors, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Because it's not as easy as everyone says, especially if you haven't got that big bundle of cash. Absolutely. And last week I just had my valuation on my 5-bed, which is it was a 6-bed sitting unit in Sittingbourne, and I've converted it into a 5-bed HMO because it had the 50p key meters in. It had 50p meters in. It had kitchenettes in every room, and there was only like 2 toilets in the building and 2 showers. So what I did was made it all en suites, took all the kitchenettes out because obviously they're fire risks, and I lost one of the rooms to make that into a kitchen sort of dining area, and had the valuation back on that last week. So again, that was another thing that was downvalued, and you know, if I'd gone, I future-proofed that property so that I could put stairs to go up. There's also the electrics and fire alarms and everything are all up in the loft. So if I want to go up again, I've still got the opportunity to put 2 more rooms up there and a kitchen up in the roof as well. And that's where I am today. And that's in a space of what, since 2018 to today.
Wow.
So the portfolio is worth just over 5 million.
Wow.
Considering I started with 140,000. But it's been bloody hard work, and if anyone tells you it's easy, it hasn't always been easy. There's been a few hairy moments.
Is there anything you would have done differently?
Possibly.
Yes.
Vet my builders. Don't take them.
Don't take them.
But yeah, so that's been the story. But change it? No. I think actually, going back to when I was a kid, my mum had a house that she used to rent out, like HMOs, but we didn't know it as a HMO back in the day. So it would have a shared toilet, and there'd be a kitchen in each floor, and that's how she had it. And we lived in a 3-bedroom house that then was converted into a 6-bedroom. So, and I remember my mum and dad splitting up at the time, and you know, me and my sister and my mum in one room, while my mum rented out the top of it to be able to pay for it all. So I've kind of grown up on building sites, and I suppose around letting and stuff like that. But when I used to say to my mum, "This is what I'm doing," she'd go, "I haven't got a clue what you're doing." But she did the exact same thing. It just wasn't called HMOs or, you know, lodgers or whatever. So, yeah, that's kind of... So it's probably been in my blood.
Yeah, definitely.
It's probably, you know, and I've probably seen people do stuff around me. I haven't got any friends that do anything like what I do. You know, I've come along, I've met you, you know, I speak about jazz and Nisha and stuff as well. Yeah. And along my property journey, I've met lots of people that do stuff in property. Nobody I know. One of my friends used to say, "You buy houses like we buy handbags." And I used to say, "Well, handbags ain't going to pay me a living, you know, or be an asset." So, you know, it's all very well. I like a handbag as well, but, you know, I'm building and growing wealth. And I just looked at it, I was growing it all for my pension so that I don't have to work, I don't have to do the 9 to 5, and I could be there for my mum and whatever have you. So, but it's been fun, and I've learnt a lot along the way. So I've learnt about the short leases. I've mentioned to you the portfolio that I bought that had 2 flats in one block. The service charges was $3,200 per flat a year, and it doesn't faze me because I'd already done it on the original Minimo flat. I will look at it and say, would it meet the criteria for a right to manage, and can I talk everybody in the block into letting me take on the management? So that particular block, I managed to link in with some of the other leaseholders. Now, to take on the right to manage, you need 50% of the block to be in agreement. And you start a limited company, or you know, a right to manage company. You then go through the process again, a legal process with the freeholder saying we want to take over the management. There doesn't have to be a dispute, but we were finding that the service charges were high, the maintenance wasn't as you'd expect, and we could probably do it better. So for that one in Wallerton, it took us over a year to get it through. We managed to do it off a very big freeholder that everyone said we wouldn't be able to do it, but we did. Myself and there's 3 other directors, so we manage the block now ourselves. I do the maintenance, somebody else keeps an eye on the bank account, somebody else looks at the bank account, somebody else does the accounts. We have like a WhatsApp group where we have like groups on it, so we'll have a community, so we'll have the directors have their own little chat, then we have all the shareholders involved, and we manage it ourselves. So we'll find local trades to do whatever we need. We have maintenance set up. The service charges, as I mentioned to you, was $3,200. They've now come down to $1,200 a year, and the property is getting better maintained. The same thing happened with the other property, the other flat that I've got, the first right to manage, but that was a little block of 6. This last one was a block of 18. So, you know, will it work? Won't it? Especially when you need 50%. But when it came to the second one, I actually said to the leaseholders, I will pay the solicitors' fees, and when we win, I'll get my solicitors' fees back. Because of the freeholder, I knew that there was going to be a big reserve pot, and there was 85 grand. Wow. There was 85 grand worth of in the revenue pot, or the sinking fund, whatever you want to call it. but they had to transfer then over to us. What we were able to do then is some people had arrears and whatever have you. We looked at everybody's. We kept a certain amount in the right to manage company, and we were able to actually give about 4,000 to 5,000, depending if people had arrears or not, back to each of the leaseholders, because the freeholder was just sitting on it. You know, okay, I understand for a rainy day in case of emergencies, whatever have you. But when we returned it back to the leaseholders, we said, look, if anything happens, like the roof caves in or blah blah blah, you will have to foot the bill. But why are we holding it just in case? Let's give it back to you. And we've been able to reduce the service charges.
And that is an amazing thing. Do you know what I mean? It's not all about, you know, landlords have a bad name, don't they, or freeholders. And actually, when you can go and do something like that, you can raise the standard of the building and you can look after your tenants who probably, a lot of them might need that.
Yeah. So at the moment, in one of my flats, which I haven't even mentioned, but one of my flats, I've had a real big issue with leaks in the roof, and I'm on the top floor, and rubbish and stuff. So you might have seen my social media moaning about rubbish. But I involved local MP. I got so annoyed with it all that I actually made a poster and posted it through all the flats. And we met in January.
Is this the post where there's like rats under rubbish that hadn't been removed for ages because they hadn't?
They kept saying they didn't have the money.
Right. So the poor tenants. I got that right.
Yeah. So I managed to get waste management involved, environmental health involved, the local MP involved, fire safety involved. At Christmas, because it was a health and safety risk, because of where the rubbish was. If there was a fine, you had to run out. It's straight into this rubbish. So it was blocking that. So what I did was I started to look at it and go, right, what can we do? Because I could sit here and say nothing and say, oh, it's down to the council, or it's down to this, or it's down to... But I will take control and find out what can we do, and then start writing and ringing and doing whatever I need to. So at Christmas, I was so pissed off with it that I then posted through everybody's doors a leaflet saying, do you want to take on the right to manage, blah, 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 blah. Then I met a couple of leaseholders that have already a little WhatsApp group, which I knew nothing about, you know, and in this other flat. So got involved with them. We set up a meeting in one of the flats in January, and out of a block of 20, from that meeting in January, we got 14 involved. So we're now looking at taking on the right to manage of that block as well. Now the thing is, with that block, it's a mixed use block, so it's commercial at the bottom and flats above. What you'll find is, originally, to take on the right to manage, it had to be 25% or less commercial to be able to take on the right to manage. So when I did all the measurements of the communal area, we needed to be, I think it was 550 or something square meters of, but we were 570, so we were just over the 25%. So luckily, the 3rd of March this month, the law changed, and what they changed through the white paper and everything else that came through, they changed the law that to take on right to manage, it could be 50% or less commercial. So then that means now we're able to go and start the process of the right to manage. So now we're on the next stage. I've discussed it with solicitors. I've got the leaseholders involved. And we're going to go, and this will probably be the 3rd one that I've done. Not that I really want to do it with right to manage, but I was getting so tired of managing agents and freeholders not doing what they need to do.
Do you think that's becoming more of a problem as well now?
Yeah, I think so. But the problem is, and it's going to be a big problem, that if Common Hold comes in, or if people are taking on the right to manage, that you've got people that actually want to improve their building, and it's not just they don't want to be paying out for the service charges or whatever have you. So it could be a really big plus,
Yeah.
But it could also be that it's a free for all. It's a free for all with anybody, you know, people just doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I think what's happened along the way is a lot of managing agents and people have abused freeholders, abused it, and just seen it as a real easy money opportunity to take it off the leasehold.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maura Walsh, will you come on this podcast again? Because I could literally speak to you all day, every day. You're such a badass and you're so generous with your information and you're just brilliant and a real inspiration to all other female property people. And yeah, I adore you and I want you to come back.
Of course.
How can people get in touch with you if they wanted to? What would be the best way to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, which is at PM Renovations Ltd, or on LinkedIn, Maura Walsh.
Yeah.
Facebook as well.
Brilliant.
You'll find me.
Love you, Maura. Thanks so much for watching What the Hut, and we'll be back soon. And I promise Maura will be back on. Thanks. Thanks, Maura.